Donald Trump slammed Obama for using Air Force One for election campaigning. Now he does the same. Washington knew before they saw. The thousands of supporters who attended his rally earlier this month in Pennsylvania first saw a symbol of the presidency at iconic blue and white Jetta. As the presidential plane approached the small airport where Trump would speak, audio of air traffic controllers clearing it to land was piped through speakers. A senior Trump's trip to Pennsylvania was only the latest example in which he has relied on Air Force One for campaigning, erasing long-standing questions about how taxpayer money is allocated for political travel. The plane, Trump's campaign reimburses the government for a portion of the travel, but in a mystery that has frustrated watchdog groups for decades, there is secrecy around how the White House accounts for Air Force One and other travel expenses. White House and Trump campaign officials said they follow federal regulations, but declined to provide details. It's Trump's Japan trip. Wasted airtime. Such trips are not unique to Trump. His predecessor, taxpayers. Trump has flown on Air Force One for roughly 24 trips this year, according to a USA Today analysis of dispatches filed by reporters traveling with him. At least 10 trips. The president this month used his office on board the plane to tape a 30-second video blasting gay New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio's decision to seek the Democratic nomination for president in 2020, a move that drew criticism from watchdog groups. If Republic. Zoe Lofgren, there. As with previous presidents, the taxpayers pay for what is considered the official business of White House travel, which often involves policy pronouncements, bill signings, and speeches. The president's camp, that's where the accounting begins to get opaque. Neither Trump, nor his predecessors, have disclosed how officials determine what portion of a trip is political. The White House does, even for a purely political trip. A presidential campaign doesn't reimburse the government for the cost of operating Air Force One, which the Pentagon pegs at $165,000 per hour. Instead, the Pentagon's hourly estimate, used for internal government accounting, frequently changes. Estimated the incumbency is a big advantage for any politician seeking re-election, especially presidents. And nothing simple. Sitting presidents have been flying for less than a century. President Ronald Reagan's administration created written guidelines in 1982 on how to divide the cost of trips involving official business and politics. Found that, asked by USA Today to reveal how much the campaign reimbursed the government for travel expenses incurred during, last fall, a Trump campaign official said they would need to look into it. It's a source familiar with the accounting for Air Force One who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal details noted that most aspects of the president's travel remain a tightly held secret for security. The amount of money. Trump's trips to San Antonio and Houston in April were mostly political. After landing in the president then flew to Houston, where he delivered official remarks to the International Union of Operating Engineers. He signed He made a similar trip in early May, touring damage wrought by Hurricane Michael in Florida last year, an official event before speaking at a rally in Panama City Beach. Trump made roughly 100 trips to states outside of Washington in 2018, his first midterm election year as president, according to a USA Today analysis. That pace was rough. Campaign finance reports at the FEC show that, so far, Trump is reimbursing the government at a slower pace than Obama did. In 2004, last year's midterm, by contrast, the Trump campaign sent the U.S. Treasury $211,000 for flights and other travel expenses. But a Trump campaign official speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal accounting, said there is often a significant lag between when an Air Force One flight occurs and when the campaign receives a bill. That assertion is The official said the Trump campaign sought to address that lag and the inevitable comparisons to Obama by estimating the amount it would ultimately pay for Air Force One and other travel expenses and including that number as a debt on FEC reports. Beginning late in the first 3 months of 2019, the campaign paid down $638,264 of that balance. When those numbers were included, Trump appeared to be paying more for travel. White House officials under both Trump and Obama largely dismissed specific questions about how they account for presidential travel. Judd Deere, a White House spokesman, asserted that the administration funds the official portion of trips and that the appropriate political committee funds their portion of the president's political travel. Michael Glassner, the chief operating officer for the Trump campaign, said only that we comply with all Treasury protocol and FEC regulations. Obama faced many of the same questions, particularly after he traveled with Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton on Air Force in 2016 to a joint campaign appearance. One of the most vocal Why is President Obama allowed to use Air Force One on the campaign trail with crooked Hillary? She is flying with, then White House spokesman Josh Earnest responded at the time with an answer that is strikingly similar to how Trump aides explain the travel. Still, the issue has drawn renewed scrutiny because some of Trump's official events mirror the atmospherics of his campaign events, highlighting the difficulty of drawing clear lines. At a Georgia event, Trump, like past presidents, is not bound by the Hatch Act, which puts limits on the ability of government officials to take part in political activities, but his campaign is required to follow FEC rules on travel. Senior Ron Wyden. The White House's calculation of travel expenses can be especially challenging when the president travels to what is intended as an official event, but then engages in impromptu partisan activity, Wyden wrote. It is essential that a Wyden aide said the senator's office never received a response. The lack of clarity around exactly how much a campaign reimburses taxpayers for trips has vexed those studying the issue for decades. Contributing Adam Vandenbroek, a Matthew Sobocinski. This article originally appeared on USA Today.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park,